All right, well, hi everyone. Nice to have you all here. My name's Caitlin Schwabeck, and I'm the communications specialist here at Madison Audubon, our local chapter focused on bird and nature conservation in South Central Wisconsin. In just a moment, I'll introduce Freya. We're so excited to have her here with us tonight. But before that, I just wanted to mention that if you enjoyed tonight's event, please visit our website at madisonaudubon.org/events. We actually have a whole bunch of really great events coming up, including outings and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. Our next evenings with Audubon will take place the first week of April, and we'll have wildlife rehabilitators from the Dane County Humane Society's Wildlife Center answering all of our pressing questions about what to do if you find a baby bird, among other things. But yeah, so tonight during the presentation, if you could please keep your microphones muted, we'll have a Q&A at the end. Feel free to type any questions or comments into the chat as we go, and I'll do my best to kind of make sure that they all get answered, and Freya will answer them. Okay, and with that being said, let me start our Facebook stream. Okay, and now I'm really excited to introduce Freya McGregor. Freya McGregor, pronouns she, her, is the Birdability Coordinator and an occupational therapist. Birding since childhood, her dodgy knee often creates an accessibility challenge for her. She has a clinical background in blindness and low vision services, and in her spare time works for the radio show and podcast Ray Brown's Talkin' Birds. She's passionate about enabling all birders and potential future birders to enjoy birding and nature as much as she does. Freya, welcome.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. Hi, everyone. It's exciting to be here with you all. I've heard a lot of great things about Madison Audubon in various ways, so it's really fun to be talking with you all. As Caitlin said, my name is Freya McGregor. My pronouns are she, her, and I am going to share the screen with you. All right, so we're here to talk about birdability tonight because birding is for everybody and everybody. As Caitlin mentioned, I'm the Birdability Coordinator and an occupational therapist. And if you're not familiar with occupational therapy, it's a healthcare profession, and we're all about enabling people to do the things that bring them meaning in their everyday life that they're having difficulty doing because of an injury, illness, or disability. Sometimes it's things like cooking dinner or driving a car. Sometimes it's things like birding. So this is pretty exciting work here for me as someone who's a birder. So what do you see in this photo? Now, if you're blind or have low vision or need to look away from the screen or anything like that, I will be describing out loud everything that is on the screen, so you won't miss anything. But if you do see it, just like you to have a think real quick about what you see on this screen. By the way, if you would like to share in the chat, I won't be able to look at your messages while I'm talking. I'm not that good at being at multitasking, but I would love to read them later. What it is about this that you're interested in, and if you have an access challenge and you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear your experiences in the chat as well as we go through this presentation tonight. So don't feel obliged to share if you don't want to, but I'd very much welcome your input. So in this photo, I see 6 people. They're all white. There's 5 wheelchair users. 4 of those wheelchairs are manual wheelchairs, which means they're self-propelled or someone can push from behind. One of them is a power wheelchair, that one up the back right one that's kind of orange. Speaking of the chairs on the right, they're both kind of off-road looking wheelchairs. Really cool. There's lots of different kinds of wheelchairs for lots of different purposes. One of the people is standing. It's really important to note that not every disability is visible. Everyone's got binoculars. They might be birding. They could be doing something else. But also important to note, you don't need binoculars to be a birder. And we're going to talk more about that later. And then there's a chance that they're on an accessible trail. It's concrete, it's pretty wide, it's flat. This is all good start, but we don't have all the information about this location yet to make that assessment. We're going to talk more about what makes up a truly accessible birding location too, but I can tell you this is actually a really wonderful accessible trail. It's at Sweetwater Wetlands in Tucson, Arizona. It's a great spot, very birdie. So what do we know? We know that time spent in nature is good for us. A lot of people just inherently know that if they go for a walk or sit by a lake, you know, it's just really kind of calm and cleansing, and it's a good thing to do. And there's a growing body of evidence that supports this statement too. We know that spending time in nature can help reduce feelings of depression. It can help decrease feelings of stress. It can help increase our attentional capacity, which is like how much brain space you have to focus on a task. It's pretty wild. And we know that birds can be the gateway to spending time in nature. They make all kinds of bizarre noises. They have outrageous plumage. They can fly. I mean, this is wild. And so for some people, birds are that sort of prompt, that reason to go out into nature and get all those wonderful health and wellness benefits. We know that birding is the fastest growing leisure activity in the US. And this is 20-year-old statistics, but in year 2000, 85 million Americans enjoyed wild birds in one way or another. And we know that that number has grown significantly in the last 2 years, where a lot of people found themselves not able to enjoy the freedoms that birds can represent and tuning in a bit more to what's just outside their door or their window. So birding is a popular thing. And we know that birding has the potential to be inclusive and accessible, but there is a lot more work to do. We also know that 1 in 4 Americans has a disability. 1 in 4, this is a lot of people. The disability community is the only minority group that you can join at any time. It's also the largest minority. So a lot of folks, including 20 million who have a mobility challenge and 7 million who are blind or have low vision. And if you're not familiar, I know low vision can seem sort of a vague set of words in regular English, but my background is in blindness and low vision services. And low vision, it's basically the point at which glasses no longer help fix your vision. There's lots of different eye conditions that can cause low vision. You might have heard of cataracts if they're not removed. They can cause low vision. You still have some vision, but the glasses aren't really helping. So don't forget though, this is a conversation about our future selves. Anyone can join the disability community. You never know what's down the road. It's kind of pessimistic, but this is not a conversation about us and them. This is a conversation about all of us. I see that someone has their emoji hand up. If you could put your question in the chat, that would be really awesome. That way I'll be able to get to it at the end. So Birdability is a brand new nonprofit. We just became a nonprofit last January, so we're just over a year old, and our mission is to share the joys of birding with people who have disabilities and to ensure birding is accessible to everybody. We have 3 spokes of our work, and like a wheelchair's wheel, these spokes just keep rolling on into each other, and it's important that we address all of these things if we want to do what we say we want to do. We want to address the physical accessibility of birding locations. We're going to talk about that tonight. We want to empower a welcoming and inclusive birding community, and we'll talk about that too, some things you can do. And we want to introduce people with access challenges to birding, and that is something we hope you will do after we finish tonight. We focus on people with mobility challenges, blindness or low vision, chronic illness, intellectual or developmental disabilities, mental illness, those who are neurodivergent, deaf or hard of hearing, or who have other health concerns. This is a lot of different people with a lot of different access needs. By the way, everybody has access needs. It's just that people who are not disabled generally have their access needs met by default. I can't fly, so to get to the 3rd story of the building, I need stairs or an elevator or an escalator. But that access need is just built in. So yes, everyone has access needs. but many folks with different access challenges have additional needs that are usually not built in, but we can change this. Even though this is the list of people that we focus our work on, there's a lot of people who can benefit from our work. Again, this is everybody. Parents with strollers, that's a mobility challenge right there. Grandparents with toddlers, older people just slowing down. I know I'd like to be birding when I'm 95, but there's going to be some things that will need to change for me to be able to do that. People with new medical diagnoses, folks with dodgy knees. I'm one of these people. 3 years ago, I woke up one morning and I couldn't straighten my right knee. I had planned to hike up the White Mountains of New Hampshire all summer. It was May, and we lived in Boston at that time. And suddenly I couldn't walk more than half a mile without pain and a lot of discomfort. And my hiking plans were dashed. My knee's a lot better now after extensive physical therapy, but it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be what it was before. And probably hiking up the White Mountains in New Hampshire, probably out of reach for me. But again, this is a conversation about our future selves. So we all have a vested interest in making sure that birding and the outdoors are inclusive and accessible if we want to be part of that in the future. So Virginia Rose is the founder and president of Birdability. She's a retired high school English teacher who lives in Austin, Texas, and she's been birding for 20 years. When she was 14, she was in a horse riding accident, which caused a T10 spinal cord injury. That's the level of the spine, T10, it's about waist height. And as a result of that injury, she cannot feel or move her legs, and so she uses a manual wheelchair to get around. She's discovered birding 20 years ago, but she kept running into all these difficulties. Parking was frequently a challenge. She drives. She has a modified van that has hand controls. It's really cool. Hand controls are really awesome. So she drives. So parking can be a challenge. Gates, lots of different kinds of gates. Most of them have not been designed with accessibility in mind. Here's a photo of Virginia. She's crouched down in her wheelchair going under a big metal gate that's designed to keep cars off a road. Not everyone can bend down and scooch under a gate like that. Bathrooms, steps and curbs. Virginia will tell you that one step can be the difference between her being unattended in nature versus her needing someone to help. And this is the case for a lot of different people. She can, if she's got a good day, she can pop a wheelie and jump up a little curb, maybe, but not everyone can do that. And the power of being unattended in nature is something else. You know, being outdoors on your own, not needing help, that has so much power and so much value for so many people. So just one small step can be the difference for Virginia. Railings, safety barriers. We definitely like safety barriers. We don't want people falling off cliffs or over the edge of bridges, but so many barriers have been built without any thought of the eye line of someone who is seated in a wheelchair, for example, and often have the widest part of a plank of wood facing the people on that bridge or on that boardwalk, creating a completely unnecessary visual obstruction. Mud and sand, really difficult surfaces to wheel over. And Virginia's in Texas, so cattle guards, cactus spines, and cow patties are a thing. She's out there trying to find rare birds in paddocks and fields and stuff, and she'll tell you that cow patties on your boots are one thing, but cow patties on your wheels and so on your hands are quite another thing entirely. And all of these things by themselves and collectively continue to create a lack of independence for Virginia, and she's fiercely independent. A lot of people value being independent, and it's that thing about being unattended in nature. But she kept birding because, as she will tell you, difficulty and uncertainty lead to empowerment and joy. Learning, friendships, travel opportunities. This is a photo of Virginia at McGee Marsh at the during the Big Bird Festival, the biggest week in American birding in Ohio. She and I will be there together in May this year. We're looking forward to leading outings and doing a workshop. But travel doesn't have to be interstate or international. Travel can be going to a new park 20 minutes down the road that you've never explored before. Physical health benefits, moving your body, after looking, as you're trying to find some birds. Confidence, navigating new situations and figuring it out. Independence, oh, it feels good. Community, being part of a group of people with similar values and interests has it does so many good things for our own health and wellness. Purpose, looking forward to going birding on the weekend, and the birds themselves. All of these things created so much empowerment for Virginia, but she never saw anyone else birding using a wheelchair. And she thought maybe people just don't know what they could get from birding. So many more things than just the birds. And that is how the idea for Birdability was born. Another thing that's really important to know is disability is diverse. Virginia is a manual wheelchair user. She has a mobility challenge, but her mobility challenge is quite different than mine with my bad knee. I can go up a step, no problem. But I really like benches because I can sit down and rest my knee. Standing is much harder than walking, like standing for a long time. And so if there's an opportunity to sit down, I'd love to take that. Birding benches, by the way, we need more benches in the world, very, very much. Benches with armrests connected to the paved surface of the trail by another paved surface. More benches are needed. But Virginia doesn't need a bench. She BYOs her seat like her wheelchair. And then there's all kinds of other disabilities. So it's really important to keep this in mind. We're talking about a really big, broad group of people. And this big, broad group of people have a lot of different access needs. So I don't have time to talk to you tonight about all the things I want to talk to you about. So I encourage you, if you're interested to learn more, our website is birdability.org, and there is a lot more information on our website about all of these things. So please check that out if you'd like to learn more. But here's a couple of highlights about things that a lot of different people with various access challenges need to know about a birding location. Parking, I mentioned parking for Virginia. She drives a van, a wheelchair accessible van. It has a ramp that comes out of the side so that she can get in and out of her van in her wheelchair. Now, you've probably noticed at supermarkets and public places, accessible parking spaces. There's also van accessible parking spaces, and those are the ones with that access aisle along the side, the diagonal lines that sort of try and indicate not to park there. This is because there's all these fabulous vehicles with these ramps that come out the side. If Virginia doesn't have the space to deploy that ramp and the space to get on and off it at the end, she can't get in or out of her vehicle. And if she can't get in or out of her vehicle, she can't access that location. And other people will need that access aisle so they can bring their wheelchair or their scooter right up to the door and transfer in and out of their car directly into their mobility device. If you take nothing else away from this presentation tonight, please never park in the access aisle of a van accessible parking space. It's not a parking space. It's not a motorbike parking space, not a bicycle parking space. It's not a place to leave your shopping cart at the supermarket. This is really important and you can really mess someone's day up. So please don't park there. Of course, not everyone drives, not everyone can drive. And so other methods of getting to the birding location are really important too. Is there public transport nearby? Is that accessible? Are there bike paths? Someone could ride their bike to that place. Finding out the trail information ahead of time is really important for a lot of people. Many websites for nature centers and places will say, we have an accessible trail. It's 1/2 a mile long. That's great, but are there benches? Is there shade? I need a lot more detail to know if that's a place that I really want to go explore. And a lot of people do. A lot of bird outings too, in the description, they'll say, oh, we're going to be birding on this trail. It's an easy outing. Easy? For who? Like a marathon runner? Like, what does that even mean? That's so subjective. We need a lot more detail. This Many of these photos were taken at my favorite accessible trail at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. This trail has these signs at the trailhead and at the intersection when another trail intersects with this one, and it is so awesome. It has really, really detailed information about the length, the surface, which matters to some people, the tread width, particularly people using mobility devices. You need to be able to pass someone safely without being forced off the trail, because if you're forced off the trail, you might not be able to get back on it. The gradient or the steepness, the slope, and the cross slope. The cross slope is like how much of an angle you'll be on as you're traveling down that trail. And again, a lot of people with different mobility devices or people who have difficulty with balance, things like that, that cross slope is really important to know about. This trail, the paved surface stopped and a dirt trail continued. And this information was found again at that intersection. And I was just starting to figure out what my knee could manage. And we only planned to do the concrete section of this trail. But because it gave me this level of detail about what happened next, I thought, you know, that gradient's not that steep. And I think I could probably manage this. And I did, and it was so good. And I hiked for so much more. I hiked so much further than I thought I could, and there were birds everywhere. It was migration, spring migration in Kentucky. Mammoth Cave was phenomenal, and it was all because I had this information at my disposal. So this is really important, and I'm going to tell you about a way we're trying to plug this information gap in a second. Bathroom accessibility is really important for a lot of people. Most people need to use the bathroom. Some people, particularly people with chronic illnesses and stuff, often need to use the bathroom more frequently. And like any built structure, there's lots that goes into bathroom accessibility, like, is the door wide enough? Is the door too heavy? Or can you push it easily and hold it open as you move through it one-handed because you're in a wheelchair? Is the stall is it an accessible stall? Are there grab rails? Is the sink low enough that you can reach? Is the toilet paper dispenser reachable when you're seated on the toilet? You think that would be obvious, and yet this photo I really love because there's two portaloos, and you can get a regular size portaloo and you can get accessible portaloos. And this is the thing. I would rather use an accessible portaloo if no one else is waiting, given the option, because there's more space. They never seem quite as hot and stuffy and smelly. And I can use an accessible portaloo, but Virginia in her wheelchair cannot use a regular portaloo. If you get the accessible portaloo, everyone can use it. This is the thing about accessibility. No one loses when you build things to be accessible. Everyone wins. Interpretive signs, there's a few things that go into this. We want large print, size 16 font at least. We want really good contrast between the color of the text and the background. We want to make sure that the surface of the trail continues up to the sign so that someone who needs it can just keep going, not having the sign out on like a little island over there in the middle of the grass or something. We want to make sure the sign is at a height that someone seated and someone standing could read. Like this one, it's tilted and it's just at the right height. This sign also has a tactile component. The top right-hand corner, it's a mock-up of the sycamore tree, the bark this sign has been talking about. And you might think, oh, okay, so someone who's blind or has low vision could feel that part of the sign. That's cool. Yeah, and a bunch more people too. Little kids, people like me, kinesthetic learners, I just want to touch things to learn, maybe older people with dementia, maybe people with print disabilities who aren't going to read paragraphs of text but could get something from this sign, maybe people who don't read English, it's not their first language, but they can get something from this sign because there's a tactile component. And this is the other thing about accessibility and inclusion. Often you think, oh, well, doing this thing will help this group of people. But more often, there's a whole lot more groups of people who will benefit from that access feature. It's really cool. The other thing we love seeing with interpretive signs is an audio component. Now, some places they'll have like like an iPod, or, you know, in museums, they might have like a wand thing, you know, where you borrow it from the front desk or the visitor center and you punch the number in when you get to the sign and you listen and it reads you aloud what the text is. That's great. If the visitor center's open. During COVID, a lot of visitor centers have been closed, or maybe it's Sunday afternoon and it's just not open after 3 o'clock on a Sunday. Or maybe it's like this trail where the visitor center is 5 miles away. I'm not driving back there. Another option is a QR code that you scan with your smartphone, and that reads aloud to you the text on the sign, which is awesome if you have a smartphone. Not everyone can afford a smartphone. What about if you don't have any battery? Or you're at Mammoth Cave where there is zero reception at all. So QR codes aren't really the best answer either. They're good, they're better than nothing. But the best thing that I've come across is this pillar on the right of the sign. There's a pillar, it's solar powered, it's always open, and you just press the button and it reads aloud the text on the sign. Really, really cool. And a lot more people will be able to engage with the place and with this information because of it. Maintenance is really important. No matter how accessible the birding location is, if it is not maintained, it will not stay that way. It's outside, it's out in nature, stuff happens like snow. Now, it wouldn't be fair to expect every nature centre or state park to plough up to every single snowfall. That's not necessarily possible. But what they can do is maybe there's a ploughing schedule. Maybe they only plough Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. But if that's the case, put that up on the website, because if it's Friday night and it snows, and I was thinking of going there on Saturday, but it's a 2-hour drive, and I can see on their website they're not going to plough till Monday morning. Well, I'll save myself a 4-hour round trip and a lot of irritation by just not going this time, and I'll wait till there's not snow on the ground. Vegetation, shrubs in particular, can grow over trails and encroach on that width, which means that for some people, they won't be able to move down that trail easily or at all. Even tree trunks or branches that grow up across the top of the trail, someone who's sighted will just kind of dodge that without thinking, but folks who are blind or have low vision won't necessarily know it's there, and it's not very fun to knock yourself out on a tree trunk when you're going down a trail. And leaves, thick carpets of leaves, especially during fall, can be a huge slip hazard for everybody, and be particularly challenging if you have any gait difficulties or you're using a mobility device just to move through that thick carpet of leaves. So boardwalks, you know, the planks can flick up, holes, there's all kinds of things. So maintenance is really important. Talked about railings a little bit before with Virginia in that photo. There's so many different ways you can design a safety barrier so the railing does not create a visual obstruction. And this is my very favorite. Back at Mammoth Cave, I thought that this viewpoint had been vandalized. I was horrified, this beautiful trail. And it turns out those 2 sections of the safety barrier are actually nice, thick, clear perspex glass. Plexiglass, perspex or plexiglass. It's still a safety barrier, no one's falling through it, but everyone can see the same thing. Little kids and strollers can see out. The toddlers don't have to be standing there like peering through those jail bars. Virginia in her wheelchair can see everything. I can be resting my knee on that wonderful bench and have the same view as someone who is standing. That is wonderful. So now you know about some of these access considerations, you are ready to help us plug this knowledge gap. The Birdability map is something that we do with National Audubon, and it's really, really cool. It's crowdsourced, which means you can contribute to it. And to do that, each of these yellow diamonds, and you can probably tell there's a lot more in the US than anywhere else, but I believe, I'm Australian if you're wondering, I believe our work is global, and it applies anywhere there are people and birds, which is everywhere. So this is definitely not limited to the US, but to contribute to the Birdability map, you submit a Birdability site review. There's a printable checklist if that's helpful for you to take out, and it asks you just to report on the access features and what is there. You don't have to make any judgment calls. Saying something like, oh, well, a wheelchair user could manage that slope isn't helpful, because how do you know? Like, you don't know every possible wheelchair user. So many different people use wheelchairs for so many different reasons. You have no idea. Let them decide for themselves. Just tell us what the slope is if you can find that information out. It looks big. It's not hard though. It just looks big because there's lots of options, but it's actually really not difficult. And the only thing you have to decide is if the location is a reasonably accessible birding location. So birding locations include trails, bird blinds, observation decks, feeder stations, car birding routes. These are all birding locations that we want to see pinned to the birdability map. And there's more information on our website to quantify what a reasonably accessible birding location is. But please don't send us like the epic mountains. There isn't currently a way to filter these results. And so we only want the really good stuff up there. So please keep that in mind. There's again a lot more information on our website about submitting to the birdability map and why all these access considerations matter and who they matter to. And then when you submit it, it populates the birdability map, and anyone can click on that yellow diamond and get this detailed accessibility information ahead of time, which really matters to a lot of people. And you can link directly to a birdability site review. So if you're writing an outing event description for your bird club, or Madison Audubon's holding outings, you can please include some key details in your outing event description, but you can also just as well link to the site review and say, hey, here's some more information about this. So, slight change of direction here. I am on a mission to redefine birding as the act of enjoying wild birds. As simple and as broad as that. As I said, I'm from Australia originally. My parents are birders, but they don't call themselves birders. They call themselves bird watchers. And I asked them a few years ago why they didn't say they were birders. And they said, oh, birding's all very well, but it's a really American word and we're not American. It's fair enough. But you know what my clinical background is? Not everybody watches birds, right? Someone who's totally blind is not watching a bird, but they might be enjoying the bird by ear. In fact, most people who are sighted bird by ear to some extent, even if you don't think you're an expert at it, you might just hear a sound over there and you turn around and go look for it. That's still kind of birding by ear. I could talk about this for a long time, and I think Caitlin's going to stick in the chat an article that I wrote for Audubon magazine if you want to read more about my opinions on this. But redefining birding as the act of enjoying wild birds includes a lot more people into this wonderful hobby and this wonderful community. You don't have to be seeing birds. You don't even need binoculars to enjoy birds. Not everyone can afford binoculars. Not everyone can hold or carry or lift binoculars. Not everyone feels comfortable using binoculars. You don't need binoculars to be a birder. You don't need to move down a trail. You don't need to be outside. You can be birding inside through your window. You can be birding on your computer, watching a nest cam, it's enjoying wild birds. In fact, you don't even need to be able to identify a bird, right? It's still a fabulous creature, whether you know what everyone else calls it or not. Make up your own names. It doesn't matter. So being this broad of a definition, I know a lot of people have shared with me that they feel much more included now as a birder because they too enjoy wild birds. And so they feel like they can call themselves a birder. If you don't want to call yourself a birder, if you want to stick with bird watcher, that's totally fine. Everybody, this goes for a lot of different scenarios, by the way, everybody is allowed to identify however they like. So if you want to stick with bird watcher, that's totally okay. But I think broadly, we as users of this language can redefine it however we want. Language is always evolving, and I think that we can make this hobby and this community a lot more inclusive for a lot of different people, particularly birders, beginner birders and birders with access challenges, if we redefine birding as the act of enjoying wild birds. So I suggest we don't talk about bird watchers anymore, we talk about birders. And here's an interesting one. Bird walk. Not everyone can walk. Virginia can't walk, although she talks about bird walks because that's what everyone else says. So no one's going to get like mortally offended if you say this. But these kind of word swaps, I've had to do quite a lot of them as an Australian living in the US, just to be more clearly understood. If I use my Australian words, a lot of Americans wouldn't know what I was saying, and it's, you know, more difficult to communicate. Doing these little word swaps is kind of annoying the first 2 or 3 times you have to remember, and then you just get used to it, and it's really not that bad. And if we can swap out bird walk for bird outing or field trip, imagine how many people might think, you know, maybe I could go to that, because they're not emphasizing the fact that I'm going to have to walk. Seems like a really easy way to be more inclusive to me. While we're on language, handicapped and impaired are generally considered by many people in the disability community to be outdated and sometimes quite offensive. Now, again, if this is how you identify, please keep going. And if you know someone who says, who refers to themselves as handicapped, please do not say, Freya from Birdability said that's rude. Don't do that, please. Gosh, everyone is allowed to identify however they like. But in general, handicapped and impaired are generally seen as outdated and somewhat offensive. Because there is nothing wrong with having a disability, there is no shame in having a disability. And so it is not offensive to say someone has a disability or is disabled. Normal, though, is probably best avoided in this conversation. Probably what you mean is that someone is non-disabled or able-bodied or sighted or hearing or neurotypical. That's probably what you meant. Best to avoid normal. Also, please do not use the phrase wheelchair bound. This is really disempowering language. It sounds like the person is confined to their wheelchair. Without their wheelchair, they are nothing. Like, oh, this is rough language. Wheelchairs are freedom machines. It's the opposite of being bound. Wheelchairs are incredible, and without wheelchairs, so many people would not be able to do all the cool things that they do. And so don't use wheelchair bound, just say someone's a wheelchair user. They just use a wheelchair to help them get around. And because we're moving away from impaired, vision impaired is being used less and less, and instead you can just say that someone is blind or has low vision. It's not enough to just think you're being inclusive. You have to be intentionally inclusive. Now, this being intentionally inclusive always takes more effort and more time. Sometimes it takes more money, but this is the difference between sending out a Facebook invitation to all your friends saying, hey, we're having a barbecue at our house on Saturday, hope you'll come, and sending me a direct message saying, hey, Freya, I'm having a barbecue. I'd really love you to be there. I really want to catch up with you. Will you come? Oh, you specifically want me there? Oh, I would love to be there. Thank you. Yes, I will absolutely come. Big difference in how it's received. And there's lots of ways that you can be intentionally inclusive when it comes to birding. Now, these tips have been written for bird outing leaders, but most of them apply to any birder at all. Smile and say hello to other birders. It seems really obvious, but it's a really great way to start. And the saying hello bit's important too, because not everyone will see your smile, especially someone who's blind or has low vision, or maybe they're not making eye contact because they're feeling really uncomfortable. Saying hello, make sure you verbalize that as well. Include a welcome statement at the beginning of your bird outings. This is really straightforward, but it makes a huge difference. If you feel comfortable sharing your pronouns, that can be really helpful. And if you're not sure, the reason this is important is that not everybody's pronouns, my pronouns are she, her, not everybody's pronouns match their appearance, and you might make assumptions about someone's pronouns based on what you think what they look like. But inviting people to share their pronouns means that folks, particularly folks who are non-binary or transgender, may feel a lot more comfortable to share their pronouns with you and the group. So a welcome statement could look something like, hi everyone, my name is Freya. My pronouns are she, her. I'm really excited to go birding with you today. I want to make sure you know that I don't know everything there is to know about birds. Nobody does. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know. If I don't know, we'll figure it out together. And if you can't reach me, just ask someone around you. They'll be happy to help you if they can. which is, by the way, a subtle behavioral expectation of other people. We're all going to be doing this together and we're all going to be helping each other out. It really can help set the tone. Another thing we do on our outings is we go around in a circle and we invite people to share their name, their pronouns, and if they have an access challenge and it would be helpful for other people to know about it, please feel free to share. That way, people aren't being forced to disclose their medical history with a bunch of strangers if they don't want to. But for some people, it's really helpful for everybody to know. For example, I tell people about my bad knee and that if there's a bench, I'm probably going to be sitting on it. And that, especially as one of the leaders, that's really helpful because otherwise people are going to look at me like, why is the leader having a break? But no, I've just explained why I'm having a break. And now you all know I've got a dodgy knee. Another person who might be deaf in their right ear might find it really helpful to tell everyone one time, all at once, that they're deaf in their right ear, and if you need to talk to them, stand on their left side because then they'll actually hear you. That's really valuable for them, for everyone else to know about. Don't single someone out because of a difference unless it is relevant, and if you do, try and do it one-on-one. If someone shows up on your outing and they're using crutches, going, oh, wow, there's someone here with crutches, how exciting, is really awkward. Please don't do that. That's really bizarre. But if there's like 5 steps coming up ahead, if you are trying to hold an accessible outing, maybe don't hold one where there's steps. That's a strong hint. But if there were steps coming up ahead, see if you can get that person up the back of the group or something, as everyone else is birding or going down the trail. And you can say like, hey, look, I see you using crutches. That's not rude. They know they're using crutches. That's not a secret. You don't have to avoid that topic. Hey, I see you using crutches. Just so you know, there's some stairs coming up, but let me know if you need a hand getting up them or if we need to game plan something else. Most people will really appreciate that you noticed that they had additional access needs. They won't be offended that you said that. Offer help, but be prepared to graciously accept no. Not everyone wants your help. Not everyone needs your help, but some people do, and they'll really appreciate that you noticed. If someone says they do want your help, your next question needs to be, how would you like me to help you? Don't just launch in and assume you know. You're not the expert on what they need. They are the expert on what they need. So let them guide you in what help they need. And if they say no, don't get all hoiked up about it. Oh, well, I was just trying to be nice. Like, just play it cool. Don't do that. Say something like, oh yeah, no worries. Well, if you do need a hand, I'll be around, so let me know. Just be cool. Believe someone if they identify a bird. This goes for a lot of different people. Beginner birders, women birders, BIPOC birders, disabled birders, birders who have a different accent. It's remarkable how many people assume that because I don't have an American accent, I know nothing about American birds, which is incorrect. And it's so discouraging when someone assumes you have it wrong, even though they don't know anything about you, except that you're a little bit different to them. Instead, a really easy attitude adjustment is trust but verify. Assume they've got it right, but then go check. Oh, what? Like an American redstart? That's cool as. Let's see. And maybe it's not an American redstart. That's okay. You can explain why it's not, but just assume they've got it right. Don't assume they've got it wrong. It's not a way that makes me want to go back birding with that group again. And I know this applies for a lot of different people. And be actively anti-racist. I am not the best educator on this, and I strongly encourage you to Google this. There's lots of incredible online resources and really amazing books. Anti-racism is not the same thing as not being racist. Being anti-racist is an active thing, working on, particularly if you're white or white passing, but working on your own internal biases and trying to do a thing to help take away the racism, not just being neutral and not racist. So please look into that. It's really important to know that this work about being welcoming and inclusive, if Birdability was only trying to include disabled birders who were straight, cisgender, and white, we would not be doing our job. That is not the job. There are Black wheelchair users. There are autistic gay folks. Like this is what intersectionality is. That many people hold multiple. Everybody holds multiple identities, but many people hold multiple historically marginalized identities, and we have to be trying to address all of a person, not just a piece of them, if we genuinely want to include them in birding and the outdoors. Don't force someone to opt out. Go out of your way to allow them to opt in. What does this look like from a group or organization perspective? Well, you can create an inclusion and diversity statement, put it up on your website and use it to hold your employees, volunteers, and your organization accountable for the actions you are going to take. You can hold accessible bird outings as part of your regular programming. Once a month would be great. Don't just do it as a one-off thing. That's not enough. You keep doing it. You'll find birds, I promise, and include that detailed accessibility information in your outing event description. Include image descriptions for social media posts. This is something everybody can do too, by the way, organizational or as an individual. A lot of people, particularly people who are blind or have low vision, but a lot of people with print disabilities and other things use software that's called screen reader software, and it reads aloud the text on in an email or on the internet, but it can't read a photo. There isn't text in a photo. So an image description is included in a caption on a social media post, and it describes in pretty simple language, you have to write this, what the photo is showing or all the text that is presented visually, in an infographic or something. On our website, this is called alt text or alternate text. It's very similar, but an image description everyone can view because it's in the caption and get to. We can all do this. It takes more time, it takes more effort. It is free though, and all of us can be doing this thing, because if you don't, people who use screen reader software are being forced to opt out of what you're trying to share through social media. We want to make sure people can opt in. Include closed captions for all webinars and meetings, even if no one has asked for them. This is another one of these great things. You're signaling to people, hey, I know you might need this. We want you here. We've got it. Include that information in the event description. Closed captions will be provided. It's really exhausting to have to advocate for your needs over and over again. And I know a lot of people who need closed captions, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, and a lot of other people, people with auditory processing disabilities, lots of other stuff need closed captions. And if it doesn't say that they'll be provided, many people will just assume they won't, and they just won't come. They won't even ask you if it's going to be provided. They just assume you haven't got them. So this is really easy. You can also include closed captions on YouTube videos, on Instagram Reels and TikTok and all of that stuff. Closed captions benefit a lot more people than you probably realize. And like everything else, there's more information on our website about how to do that. Remove financial barriers to access whenever possible. It's not always possible, but sometimes you can have a couple of scholarships available, or you can have a grant or a sponsorship that covers the cost of admission, or you can have a pay what you wish model. A lot of people can't afford to do things that they want to be able to do, and disability is really expensive. So whenever you can, removing that financial barrier is awesome. And provide honorariums for speakers, consultants, writers, etc. This is really important. Now, it's sort of different if someone like me is being paid as part of their work to do a presentation. But if you are expecting someone to give up their free time to educate you or entertain you using their own expertise or emotional labor for free, that is not fair. This is an issue of equity, and you will be forcing a bunch of people to opt out who can't afford to do that for you for free. And if you want to help amplify and include particularly historically marginalized voices, honorariums are a really important way to signal that you respect their contribution and their time and their expertise. So speakers, presentations, consultants is like, if you're involved in designing and building an accessible trail, and you reach out to the local disability community and you invite a few people to come out and scope out your trail and give you feedback. I mean, that's a great thing to do. if you can pay them for that time. If you can't pay them for that time, it's not fair to ask them to do that for you. And writers too, you know, if you have articles and things for a publication, even $50, it's not very much. I don't recommend that as the way to go, but if that's the best you can do, budget for it. It's not an additional cost if it's in your budget. It's just part of your programming budget, and then you just do it. So on our website, we have a bunch of resources for birders with disabilities and other health concerns. And there's a lot more coming. We have the Birdability map. We already talked about that. We have a page on our website about adaptive birding equipment. This is really cool. This gets me really excited as an occupational therapist. Things like wheelchair mounted scopes. There's a whole lot of really nifty stuff on our website about adaptive birding equipment. We have a Birdability Birders Facebook group, and particularly if you're a birder with an access challenge, or if you're engaged in this work, I invite you to join it. We have the Birdability blog, which I really love using to amplify the experiences of birders with access challenges. Other birders with similar access challenges may learn a thing or two that they can use themselves, and it provides a lot of really important representation that we just don't have enough of in the birding community in general. And people, non-disabled birders, can learn a lot from reading some of these blog posts. So I encourage you to check that out. It's really, really cool. Guess what? We provide an honorarium for contributors because it's the right thing to do. Virtual programs, bringing birds into people's houses, like through a computer. Not everyone can get outside and go and do the in-person programs. So we do virtual field trips, really, really fun. And if if you have a way to bring birds to people through their computer, I mean, that's awesome. It's really great. And we have a lot more coming, ideas, tips, tricks, and more coming, particularly for different folks with different access challenges. I am a one-person team, so there's lots of things that are in the works that are coming soon. We are only a year old and we've done a lot in a year, but there is a lot more. One of the things that's coming is New Jersey Audubon's World Series of Birding is a big competitive big day event. It's in May 14 this year, and this year Birdability will be entering the first team that will be made up entirely of people with access challenges. We're really excited about this, and it's a great opportunity to show people that birders with disabilities can full stop, if you would like to support Team Nuthatch, or if you would just like to support Birdability in general, birdability.org/donate is where you can do that. As a brand new nonprofit, any donation is really appreciated. It all makes a difference. And if you've learned anything tonight that you'll be applying going forward, if you feel inclined, please head over to birdability.org/donate, because birding is for everybody and everybody. My email address is info@birdability.org. Again, I'm a one-person team, so it may take me a couple of days to get back to you. But I would love to hear from you if you've got any questions. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Birdability. And you're always welcome to reshare any of our social media posts, because the more people who see that representation and learn about ways to be more welcoming and inclusive and all the good stuff, the better. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Freya. That was just wonderful. All right, so I've attempted to also pop the links into the chat as Freya was talking, so feel free to check those out. And I just wanted to open up to see if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask. Feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll unmute you so you can speak.
By the way, we should say with questions, this is a safe space. If you're unsure about language use, or you don't want to say the wrong thing, we're all learning, so don't worry about that. It's more important that you ask the question and get the opportunity to learn than that you feel awkward and don't ask. So please don't worry about that.
I can ask. Oh, Mary.
Hi, I'm sorry, I still haven't figured out how to raise my hand in Zoom meetings with the emoji. One of the challenges that Katie and I have is that we would really love to get out on trails on a bike, Katie has some challenges with balance, as do I. What we really need is like a side-by-side bike.
Yes.
We have seen them, but we have never been able to find a place to rent them. And I've also heard I have other people that I know who would have challenges like they would want to have like an all-terrain wheelchair that they could rent. Is there an organization somewhere that can tell you where to find that locally? So, I mean, I've called every bike shop here in Madison, Wisconsin, and they don't even have like tricycles to rent, adult tricycles. And yet I see events where people have them. I see it, I get the feeling it's out there somewhere. I just don't know where it is.
So the easy answer is about the all-terrain wheelchairs. And you're in Wisconsin, which is very convenient because the only organization I know, the only place I know that does this is Wisconsin. Accessibility Wisconsin is an organization that has all-terrain wheelchairs that you can book in, and they will bring them to whatever site you're at, and you can use them, and then they'll take them away. Really, really cool. And yeah, check them out because I think it may be even free, or at least it's not very much, but they'll bring it, which is a huge barrier. A lot of people can't take a big, especially an outdoor, like an all-terrain wheelchair is a big heavy object. So check that out. I have never seen a bike that was a side-by-side, like a push bike, other than like a motorbike with a sidecar. So
have you seen like reclining bikes?
A recumbent? Mm-hmm.
A recumbent, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's just like one of those, but with another recumbent right next to it.
Okay. Yeah, I've never run into one of those, but there are some, and I don't know the answer for Wisconsin, but there are some places that will have, yeah, you said you already kind of looked up all the places you can. I keep putting feelers out. There may be many states or like regions in a state will have an adaptive sports group, and they may have recumbent bicycles. A lot of people with different like back issues or balance issues or hand problems and stuff will be able to use a recumbent bike and not a standard bicycle. And so it might be worth asking those folks if they have any, or if they know of any. I'd start there. There's probably a Wisconsin Adaptive Sports group, some kind of name like that. It'll be worth touching base with.
It would need to be a tandem one for us because Katie has vision challenges, so it's it has to have tandem, it's got to have space for two riders on it.
Sure. Yeah. I'd ask the adaptive sports folks nearby. Yeah, start there, and they should be able to direct you if they haven't got anything for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, great. Not to have more like immediate answers, but
but good to have some search engine terms.
And
adaptive bike or adaptive cycling, that kind of stuff. Adaptive is a good word in this area.
There was a cool bike that I almost was able to buy because it was, I mean, most of these the side-by-sides are like $5,000, $7,000. But there was something that was actually affordable, but it happened during the pandemic, and it had to come from Great Britain, and it was they stopped making them due to the pandemic. So
sure. Well, good luck.
It does exist out there.
Sure.
I'll just chime in super quickly to say as well. We at Madison Audubon partner with Accessibility Wisconsin pretty regularly. So if you're planning on attending any of our field trips, we've been trying to include a question in case anyone wants to rent or try out a wheelchair during the field trip. We work with Accessibility Wisconsin and take all the logistics part out. So we'll have a chair for you if you want to try one out.
Great. Wonderful.
Sorry. And
Caitlin, I see your emoji hand.
Yeah, hi Freya. First of all, I just want to thank you for tonight's presentation. This was really lovely. And my name is Caitlin, she, hers, and I am on the leadership team for Madison's chapter of the Feminist Bird Club. I have some other members in the chat here tonight too. Our volunteer club is really committed to providing inclusive outings here in Dane County, and we've been thinking a lot about accessibility over the past year and trying to have events that meet the needs of all our different members. We've actually been submitting birdability entries to the map too for places that we've been going, so super excited to contribute in that way. My question for you is kind of from the perspective of a trip leader or a planning perspective. I'm curious how you suggest we navigate like the balance of providing outings that are able to kind of like check all these boxes for all these diverse kind of needs, and also provide outings that we know that people have expressed interest in, but are the types of outings that might exclude participants that do have disabilities. We are limited in that we usually only offer like one event a month, and so our programming for the year is limited, and it feels like this constant juggle of we want to do as much as we can, but how do we do everything and still balance like providing these outings that people are looking for, knowing that we might be leaving people out. It's one of those like, there's so many ways to do stuff, so how do we make sure everyone feels represented and included at the same time? I don't know if you can provide any insight for that, how to strike that balance.
Yeah, great question. And by the way, folks, if you don't know about the Feminist Bird Club, check them out. I'm a major fangirl. In fact, the welcome statement that I mentioned, that suggestion is entirely inspired by a Feminist Bird Club outing I went on a number of years ago, and it blew my mind of how inclusive a bird outing could be. Anyway, yes. So the best answer I can give you is that it's not possible to make every single thing 100,000% accessible and inclusive. It's not, it just isn't. And so once you know that, that takes the pressure off you a little bit. But what you can do is try, I mean, obviously you're trying to be as accessible as possible in the outings that you're planning, but I've heard a lot of people with disabilities say this. They don't ever want to slow anyone down or stop someone enjoying something because they're trying to accommodate their needs. So if you know, the people who you're trying to include, if they found out that you were not doing all this other stuff that you all wanted to be doing, like they would feel really, I would imagine they would feel really terrible about that. So don't feel like you have to be checking all the boxes all of the time. It's different people have different needs. And that's the other thing. The thing you can do is explain regardless of the outing difficulty, always explaining, and there's a whole page on our website about writing up event descriptions. That level of detail that we recommend for those event descriptions, if you can do that for all your outings, you're allowing people to opt in because you're providing that detail, and everyone has different access needs. And like I said, you know, Virginia in her wheelchair has different access needs than me with my dodgy knee. And I could do some of the stuff that maybe Virginia couldn't do. But if you don't tell me what it's going to involve, I probably just won't come. So to enable as many people as possible to opt in, you can give all that detail. If it's possible to do an outing that is explicitly supposed to be an accessible, inclusive outing every 3 or 4 months, you know, if that's the level of frequency that's achievable for you guys and also is frequent enough that it's not just sort of a one-off event, like that would be fabulous. And that's 3 or 4 more a year than would be happening otherwise, right? So look at it like that. Like this, you know, we're also not expecting Mount Everest to have a perfectly accessible trail created. Like that's just not going to happen. You know, that would be ridiculous. Why would we spend time advocating for that? So, you know, do the best you can, but please don't beat yourself up about not doing it 1,000% right every single time, because it's different, and you're serving different people with different needs. And some people want to like run through the jungle at 45 miles an hour, you know, checking every bird on their list. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that that's not the only way to go birding. So as long as you're providing alternative ways to enjoy birds that isn't just that, you know, you're doing great already. So please don't seeking perfection is really tough, but just doing the best you can, and that information, every time you can provide detailed information about an outing will help people opt in. So keep doing what you're doing.
Wonderful. Thanks, Freya. That's really helpful.
There's a question sent to me directly in the chat. And I do apologize about speaking fast. That's a thing that I have a problem with. Great point about closed captions would really help, especially with my accent and speaking really quickly. The question says, any reason parks, etc., don't have benches or seating areas on their trails or paths? I would say usually they just didn't know they should, or they didn't have the funds. But so many parks, nature centres, you know, county parks, they just don't know about this stuff. They're just not thinking about it. It doesn't impact them, so it's not on their radar. And most places, though, they want people to visit. That's why they exist. They want people to come. And so the next question is, what is the best way to address this that would help such places see how needed and easy it is? Yes, advocacy is so powerful. And folks who don't have any access challenges, this is something you can really help with, because it gets really tiring having to advocate for your needs all the time. We found that doing it in a positive way, like, hey, this place is so awesome. I really loved how you had a paved trail and you had great interpretive signs that were really clear and easy to access. I did notice, though, that on a 2-mile trail, there were no benches, and a lot of people really benefit from benches. So is it possible for you guys to find a grant or something to get a couple more benches with armrests? We want armrests on benches, and we want the bench to be connected to the surface of the trail with the same surface throughout that connection, not having a bench on an island in the grass over there. People usually are really grateful for that feedback because they didn't know. They just didn't know. It's not because they're horrible, awful people who didn't want you to come. They just didn't know. And if you want to refer them to the Birdability website as a kind of proof, if that's helpful for you, like, please do that thing if it's useful. And there's also a template on our website that you're welcome to use or modify to advocate for change about physical accessibility. So check that out in case that's helpful. But yeah, positive advocacy can really go a long way. Most people will be glad that you educated them, and then they can do better.
And we had a question come in through Facebook as well. Just someone is wondering, how can I start to raise awareness about this? What are some ways people and individuals can share this information?
Yeah, well, hey, anybody you want to tell about Birdability, please go right ahead. A really easy way to do it is to share our social media posts, like share, on Instagram, share the post to your stories or retweet a tweet or something, because the more people, everyone has a circle of influence. And it may not be big, but you have a circle of influence. And so the more people you tell, the more people who find out, the more people will know that there is an organization out here trying to make these really great changes, and why it matters, and that birders with disabilities are also birders. There's everybody, birding is for everybody, right? So yeah, you can share our website or our web pages with anybody, talking about it with, if you're at a state park or something, you meet a friendly ranger, like, have a chat with them. Maybe there's some advocacy you can do about improving their accessibility. Anything you can to spread the word. We need a lot more disability representation in birding. We need physical accessibility to improve in a lot of places. We need more welcoming and inclusive birders. Anytime you can help push that forwards is awesome. So yeah, I hope there's a few options in there that you can feel like you can do.
Awesome. And I just want to be mindful, it's a little bit after 8, so I just want to check in and see if anyone has one more, we can fit in one more question. If anyone has one. Well, and I'll just say here too, all of us at Madison Audubon are just so thrilled you're able to join us tonight, Freya. We're working to make our outings more accessible this year. So if anyone has thoughts that they want to share, you can feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to hear from you as well. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us tonight. And I hope to see some of you at some of our upcoming events. Take care and have a great night.
Thanks, y'all.